The fact is, while there is progress on Indo-US trade talks, there is still a shadow over Indo-US ties. The latest, after an Indian national, Nikhil Gupta, pleaded guilty in the US court to charges for plotting the assassination of a Sikh separatist leader who lives in New York. The US Department of Justice now claims that Nikhil Gupta was hired by an Indian government official named Vikas Yadav. The government of India has so far kept a cryptic silence over it. But there is a larger question. Did the government of India sanction a hit on a Khalistani separatist living in America who's an American citizen? Or was this a rogue operation? What's the truth? That's what we're going to try and find out tonight. Is this Dhurandhar operation gone wrong, or is it a rogue operation? Take a look at our top story.
3 days after the US Department of Justice revealed that the Indian booked for the conspiracy to kill a Sikh separatist has pleaded guilty, the government of India is maintaining silence. The Department of Justice in a statement said Nikhil Gupta pleaded guilty to all 3 counts: murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The charges attract a maximum of 40 years in prison, but the judge will determine the term, which means the actual sentence could be much lower. US District Judge Victor Marrero is set to give the sentencing in May this year. Gupta was accused of hiring a hitman to assassinate Sikh separatist Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, who lives in New York. According to the DOJ, in or about 2023, Gupta worked together with others in India and elsewhere, including Vikas Yadav, who was an Indian government employee. The indictment says Yadav was employed by the Government of India's Cabinet Secretariat, which houses the Research and Analysis Wing. In or about May 2023, Yadav recruited Gupta to carry out the assassination in the US. At Yadav's direction, Gupta contacted a criminal associate, who was in fact a confidential source working with the DEA. The source introduced Gupta to a purported hitman, who was in fact a DEA undercover officer. Yadav allegedly agreed to pay $100,000 to murder Pannun. On or about June 9, 2023, Yadav and Gupta allegedly arranged for an associate to deliver $15,000 in cash to the undercover officer as advance payment. In or about June 2023, Yadav provided Gupta with information about the target, which Gupta passed on to the undercover officer. According to the Department of Justice, Gupta specifically instructed the undercover officer not to commit the murder around the time of the Indian Prime Minister's official visit to the US, which was scheduled to begin on June 20th, 2023. On or about June 18th, 2023, masked gunmen murdered another Sikh separatist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, outside a Gurdwara in British Columbia, Canada. The Department of Justice claims that on June 19, 2023, Gupta told the undercover officer that Nijjar was also the target, and we have so many targets. Gupta added that there was now no need to wait on killing Pannun. On June 30th, 2023, Gupta was arrested in the Czech Republic. He was later extradited to the United States. After Gupta pleaded guilty, US Attorney Jay Clayton said, "Our message to all nefarious foreign actors should be clear. Steer clear of the United States and our people." It is, however, not clear why Nikhil Gupta pleaded guilty instead of fighting the charges. Bureau Report, India Today.
Lots of questions that we will raise one by one, but my first guest tonight is A.S. Dulat, former Special Director of RAW, someone who headed RAW for years, also the former RAW chief, as I said. Joining me now is Mr. Dulat. Appreciate your joining us, sir. How do you see this Nikhil Gupta case playing out? The US Department of Justice press release clearly says Nikhil Gupta worked at the behest of an Indian government employee to arrange the murder of a Sikh separatist leader. Do you see this as an embarrassment for the government and the RNAW?
No, I don't know exactly what is happening, but I mean, if this fellow has confessed and turned an approver, then it could mean anything, you know. He may have been a plant all along.
Are you saying, as the Indian government sources are now claiming this was a rogue operation? Can we just go with that? Or do you believe, given the voluminous documents now available with the US authorities, this was a covert operation launched by possibly RAW that went horribly wrong?
Well, if it's gone wrong, then yeah, it has gone horribly wrong. But I would go along with the government version here that I feel, and I felt earlier also, that this fellow could have been a plant, you know. The ease in which he is confessing and has become an approver means that he could have been a plant all along and fooled us.
But whose plant could he have been? Why would Nikhil Gupta be a plant of anyone other than the government?
Obviously, an American plant.
So you're saying that, he could be a US plant, but at the end of the day, I want to repeat what the Department of Justice United States statement is saying based on the FBI investigation. The fact is, an individual has pleaded guilty to plotting the assassination of a US citizen, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, a Khalistani separatist. Could such an operation prima facie have taken place without someone in the Indian government authorizing it? Could an individual like Nikhil Gupta simply hire someone and do it on his own?
Yeah, but there's another question here which arises. How did, in the first instance, there was no assassination attempt or anything. How, in the first instance, did the Americans know that there was a threat to Gurpatwant Singh or whatever his name is? How did they know? It could have been the same fellow, Nikhil Gupta, who was telling them.
So the fact
What
is,
they wanted to know.
sir, some reports suggest that there is a new muscular Indian strategy in such operation, that we will take out people who are involved in activities against India, whether they are based in US or Canada. If we see them, identify them as separatists or terrorist groups, do you believe that these kind of attempts, extraterritorial, can be justified? Or are we on a slippery slope if that is going to be the approach of the government of India?
No, I would never justify that. And I don't believe we have done these things, you know. I've all along said this. I don't believe we've never done it. I've been in the business myself, and we've never done these things. And I don't believe we are doing this now also. And if this was some kind of an operation, then it was a terrible operation. That's all I can say.
You're saying, but sir, across the world, Israel's Mossad, USA's CIA are known to conduct such covert operations. Only in most cases they don't get caught. But are you saying that there is a red line that India must draw, that these are not operations that Indian government should get involved or sanction at any level? Am I correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have never got involved, and I don't think we are involved.
So you are categorically saying time and again that we are not involved, but I will ask you again, why should America cook up such a case? We have a strong relationship with the Americans. Why would they cook up such a case that only ends up embarrassing the Indian government that has seen an Indian national now facing a potentially very long period behind bars? Even if you do an operation, you don't get caught. That's the rule of the spy world.
But he's done it himself, hasn't he? He's confessed himself. He says that he was involved. That's why I suspect he could have been a plant all along, you know. He could have been a US agent all along or a CIA agent all along. Whereas we thought that he was working for us, if he was. in touch
But
with somebody.
But if he was so innocent, Mr. Dulat, should he not have fought the charges instead of pleading guilty in the US court? When he pleads guilty, obviously to offset some of the punishment he will get. The fact is, I repeat, all of this is based on documentation, investigation that the US authorities have carried out. How can we dismiss it casually?
Well, you're saying the same thing in a different way from what I'm saying. That where, how, and why has he confessed so easily? And why at this point of time? I mean, this story is not happened just today or yesterday. It's 3 years old or whatever. So how did it take so long, and why the timing at this point of time? And yeah.
No, no, but sir, he has also named an individual called Vikas Yadav. They say that he was an Indian government employee allegedly working in the cabinet secretariat. He's the one who hired Nikhil Gupta, who then hired a killer to bump off Pannu. There is an Indian angle which leads right up to the doorstep of the government, sir.
I don't know whether it leads to the doorstep of our government, but who is this fellow Yadav? Has he
Sir,
been
Yadav,
identified? Do we know who he is? Except that there used to be mention of somebody called CC1.
Sir, Yadav is specifically mentioned in the US documentation. The fact that is the Indian government says he's no longer in service. The fact is, it could either be a rogue operation conducted without any authorization at any level, is what you seem to suggest. But is that really possible? Can rogue operations of this nature take place without someone in the Indian government at the higher levels knowing about this?
No, I don't believe that, but I don't say, at the same time, as I say, we've never been involved in these kind of operations, trying to bump off somebody in a third country, and that also in the United States. Why would we do it? As you say, we have a good relationship with the Americans. Why would we do it? And Pannu, in any case, was not bumped off. There was no attack on him. So how did anybody come to know that he was under threat?
But let me substantiate what I just said. The fact is, 2 years ago, Canada raised a red flag about another Khalistani leader, Nijjar, who was killed in 2023. They pointed fingers at India. It destroyed Indo-Canadian relationships. They alleged Indian government had hired the Lawrence Bishnoi gang to carry out this killing. So there seems to be a pattern.
Yeah, I remember that Nijjar case, and it was unfortunate, however it happened or whatever. But I had said at that point also that we don't do these things. We don't get involved in these things,
So you say we don't, you're saying we don't do these things. Now that could have been when you were in charge at RAW. Things may have changed. There are those who believe that within the present Modi government, there are those who feel there is a need for a more muscular policy in dealing with terrorists and separatists, even if it means possibly these hired assassinations.
So if things have changed so dramatically, then you have to ask people who are in the business now, But I still don't believe that our organization could be involved in this kind of nonsense. It makes no sense. It achieves nothing. Tell me, by bumping off Nijjar or Pannu, what do we gain? There has to be a gain somewhere, no? We had so many opportunities to, for instance, to give you an example, to bump off Geelani in Kashmir, who was much more of a nuisance. But we didn't do it. We didn't touch a Kashmiri. No Kashmiri was targeted or killed by us. Whereas Pakistan kept killing Kashmiris. Whoever fell out with them was bumped off.
Let me ask you honestly, did you ever plan to do a similar operation on Dawood Ibrahim, one of India's most wanted, based in Pakistan and Dubai? Honest answer, was that ever planned?
No way, no. How would you do it? Okay, now you've got it. Now you talk about a muscular policy. Then why have we not got Dawood? Tell me. Or why have we not attempted getting at Dawood? Is it that we have more capability in America and Canada than in Pakistan? It makes no sense at all.
So I'm asking you that, have we chosen to do, if Israel was confronted with a Dawood-like problem, they would have probably gone ahead and at least attempted to take him out. Are you saying that in India, a red line is clearly drawn by the political executive?
Of course, there is a red line. And of course, these are political decisions ultimately. You know, you or I or nobody else can do it on their own. If the top brass doesn't want it, it won't be done. And if they want it, then why has Dawood not been targeted all this while? What you're suggesting then is that we have greater capability in the United States and in Canada than in Pakistan. And that is, again, difficult to believe.
So may I just ask you in conclusion, why you would say we don't need real life Dhurandhars, am I correct? That real life Dhurandhars only exist on cinema, not in real life, where you go into Pakistan, for example, and take out someone.
You're right. You're right. This is cinema.
Okay. On that note, I appreciate you joining us, Mr. Dulat, because you've set the stage for my big talking point. Why did Nikhil Gupta then plead guilty in a US court? Is this a secret operation that went wrong and India cannot in any way acknowledge it? Was this a mission run by a rogue officer? Is this a real-life Dhurandhar case a risk, or is it worth it? Can the government of India distance itself from such a plot when the US claims they have confirmed evidence of it? Joining me now, Dr. Tara Karta is former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, KC Singh, former Indian diplomat, and Glenn Carle is former officer in CIA's Directorate of Operations, author The Interrogator. I appreciate all of you joining us. Tara Karta, your first reactions to the Nikhil Gupta case and the fact that he's made this confession and the US statement which says that he did it on the bidding of an Indian government official.
My first reaction was that right at the beginning was that this was another David Headley. He's a DA agent. You've got tons of these DA guys, they're moles roaming around doing their secret operations for them. And this is documented in the US National Security Archives where DEA agents were involved in, those cases. In the Contra scandal in Afghanistan, that was my immediate reaction. But I want to say something here. This character, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, he was fully operative when we knew about this guy, right? He was a joke. If anybody had told me, listen, we need to assassinate this guy, I would have fallen off my chair laughing. He was simply not worth it. That is my view. As there are hundreds of others. I'm not going to name them.
So then why? So are you saying this entire story has been cooked up by the US at the highest level?
No. I'm not saying that at all. If you trace it, which I have done, date by date, there was the killing of Nijar. I mean, look at that document which you're quoting. This guy tells this undercover agent that, don't kill Nijar just now because Prime Minister's coming. 2 days before PM visits, Nijar is killed. Then he tells him, now you go ahead. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Nijar is fine. In fact, 3 days ago, one couple from Canada has fled Canada because of extortion threats by the Bishnoi and one more Bimbi gang. There are 2-3 gangs, not two,
That's
three,
right.
there's lots more. That's just 3 days ago. So that gang warfare has been going on for decades. That is intertwined with narcotics. Okay, so that whole thing is operating there, and that for some reason, now this is what I want to know. Who actually killed him 2 days before the Prime Minister was to arrive in the US? Somebody bumps off Nijar. Okay, so I want to know more about that.
Okay.
And then this guy says, okay, let's go bump off Pannun now. Pannun was not worth killing.
Let me take what you are saying to Glenn Carle. He's a former officer in CIA's Directorate. As you are seeing, there's skepticism in India over this US Department of Justice investigation. There are reports suggesting that this was an operation carried out by Nikhil Gupta, hired an assassin at the behest of a government officer, Mr. Yadav. Could he have been a plant, as is being suggested?
No, it's extremely unlikely that that be the case. The evidence is from multiple sources. The Department of Justice doesn't take any instructions from the CIA or the DEA or the NSA, which seems to have intercepted some communications. The critical question is the motive. What motive would there be for the United States or part of the United States to do this? None of that adds up at all. The pattern of events and responses by the various governments and players is classic. However, if a government gets caught in an intelligence operation that has gone wrong, then of course it will say, "Oh my goodness, Glenn Carle he wasn't following orders. He seems to have lost his head. He was a rogue. He had his own partisan, personal objectives he was trying to pursue under the umbrella of the United States. When in fact, no, 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 we would never have anything to do with this. Oh, so sorry." And that's exactly what the Indian government has said. Which is the standard thing that one does when one gets caught in an intelligence operation. You change the subject, deny, and then remain silent. That's what happened. And the United States, in this instance, has simply done some police and intelligence work, the two overlapping in this case. And if the man why would he have pled guilty? I do not know the twists and turns of the trial and the process, but most likely he was offered or presented with alternative futures, which is if you plead guilty, your sentence will be probably much shorter. You might be pardoned or released for good behavior, and if not, you'll be stuck in prison for much, much longer.
Let me bring in KC Singh. KC Singh, either way, this is an embarrassment. Now, you could argue this was an intelligence operation that went wrong, so the government has no option but to say that Nikhil Gupta is a rogue, you distance yourself from him. Or the fact is that this is now part of our policy, that we are looking, whether it's the Nijjar case or the Pannun case, we are possibly entering a very, very dangerous terrain, which when it goes wrong, it becomes embarrassing.
Well, let's look at it. It first began with Canada. A relationship went completely downhill. Of course, Prime Minister Trudeau was at fault because he jumped the gun and leveled an allegation when he didn't have documentation at that stage. In retrospect, it appears the Americans had passed on the information. I think they were monitoring what Gupta was doing, and as yet, because they had not grabbed him, they were not willing to give all the information. They're keeping Canadians from sharing any details. So the Indian thing was the Canadians are leveling charges without any information. Now, since then, a relationship with Canada. Now, why would two governments, one after the other, come after India on this particular subject? No, I'm not saying the government of India is involved, but certainly it requires some examination, some investigation at end. There were some reports in the media that one officer has retired and he's no longer with a particular agency. Whatever it is, if somebody went rogue, because after all, the Americans have phone numbers, their agents claim to have spoken to the Indian person handling Gupta, etc. Let's share the information. They should share the information, find out whose phone was being used, from where were these calls made. We've heard nothing from the Indian side. So the way to handle
why
this...
are the Americans going seemingly out of their way to make this a case wherein they want to directly implicate India?
Look, as you just now heard, it's the Department of Justice. And Americans would like a lever to keep you pressed. And if there is a confession by Gupta, they may have more information. And, that information can be used slyly in your bilateral relations. That is a problem in a case like this. That if it goes higher up the chain, then it becomes a pressure point. That's why it's important for India to conduct an investigation and make the outcome public and say, this is the person, these were the phone calls, and this is the person who's involved, and you'll have to try him. Otherwise, tomorrow the Americans may ask for his extradition. That complicates things further. But if you're trying a person, you can say, we are trying him for a crime here. So there's no question of extraditing him. We haven't done that. We don't even know if there's such a person. So if the Americans are lying and the agencies have no information, then we should say so. But if they are saying that a particular person was making phone calls, it was after all going from some number. After all, $15,000 have been passed, etc. So who made that money available? Gupta would be answering that.
Can I
I
just
think
bring
it's,
in?
yeah.
I've heard you. Can I just bring in Tara Kanta at this point? Tara Kanta, you see, the details of this case is what should worry India, surely. I mean, as is being said, you can never acknowledge a secret operation that's gone wrong given the stakes involved. But it almost seems as if India has decided that, we don't want to touch Nikhil Gupta, even as Nikhil Gupta seems to be perhaps only exposing more and more details.
No, I think I was slightly misunderstood. I didn't say that the US was trying to get us into a hole. I mean, maybe they are, but that's not what I said. But I'm just saying that, see, we cooperated with them on this so-called this Yadav case. There was, unlike Canada, which didn't present us with any evidence and just kept ranting in public, the US did quietly give us some details, and there was a lot of cooperation going on. That guy, I think, was subsequently arrested for an extortion case, again involving
Yeah,
the
so that he
Vishnu
could not be
all
extradited. You
that
see,
stuff.
that's the question. The US wants him extradited. We are not. We put out another case so that we can avoid
Yeah, but
extradition.
see, the thing is, okay, that is, yeah, maybe that's true. But an assistant commandant in a CRPF attached to RAW, who was at the time involved in a case for his promotion in CAT, he carries out an assassination. I mean, it is so unbelievable that it's like a what shall I say? I can't think how it possibly could happen. That's why
Okay.
I'm saying there is something we are missing out.
What
I'm
is
not
what
saying
is
the
that?
US is
Okay, you're
lying.
saying there's something that's missing. Let me take that to my guest from the United States, Glenn Carle. Glenn, does this happen often? Could this, what is it that we are missing in all of this? It seems rather bad. An assistant commandant of CRPF is hiring someone who's supposedly a businessman. He pays off someone in the United States to carry on this operation of Pannun, who's not necessarily someone who's India's most wanted. Why do you think this would happen? What are we missing?
Well, that's a good question. First, I think Ambassador Singh raised a point that I think is worth expanding on a little bit, that bears on your question just a second, which is that there's a good possibility that the Mr. Gupta is serving as a circuit breaker at this point by pleading guilty. That in the negotiations or discussions between the prosecutors and Gupta and his defense attorneys, and then indirectly with the Indian government, of course, uh, it could well have been said that, well, listen, we have, as quite clearly seems to be the case, the intercepts of telephone calls and telephone numbers and names of people, and we can fit them into the structures of the RAW's operations or the governments and so on. And we don't really want to have all of this blow up and get worse and worse and worse. And so it would be a wise thing for Mr. Gupta to plead guilty and put an end to this. And that fits with the standard pattern of the Indian government's response, which is, oh my goodness, this is a rogue and let's turn our eyes to something else because it just couldn't possibly happen. End of story. That's the first part. The second part, what is we missing? And that's another good question. Assassinations are really sexy in the movies and so on, but they have so many fraught possibilities and unintended consequences that
Right.
usually come to pass in some way beyond the control of the perpetrating government, that they are really unwise things to do. And it's taken, no one will believe what I say now, but it's taken as an article of faith that the CIA runs around the world assassinating people, but that is not true. It is true in 1942 that the US provided a weapon that assassinated a French official during World War II, and that we tried to assassinate Castro, miserably failing. The targeted killings are clearly lethal operations, but are not the same as hiring a hitman to kill someone. And there is a clear assessment made that the costs so dramatically outweigh the benefits that it becomes just what you say, a question of, well, why in the world would
Right.
someone do this? Now, it does seem, however, and this I don't know for a fact, but it does seem that the RAW, or the Indian government, in recent years, very recently, in the last several years, in the last part of Modi's time in office, has become more aggressive in this kind of operation against dissidents and separatists and so on. So that
Okay.
does seem to be the case.
Okay, you know, that's a thought you're leaving us with. I appreciate my guest joining us. Clearly, this is a case which leaves plenty of questions unanswered, and we hope that we will get some clarity. Remember, this is not a real-life Dhurandhar case, because this is actually a case that has possibly blown up in the face of the Indian government. I appreciate my guest, though, joining me on my talking point.